Good morning, everybody. This is Kathy with Premier Life and Annuities, and welcome to another week of We Mean Business. Today I have on the phone with me, I have Mike Zimmeretti with Life of the Southwest National Life Group. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Kathy. I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing great. The sun is shining, and I'm looking forward to a really wonderful day.
Fantastic. So am I.
Good. Well, you've got some really good information for us today that you're going to be sharing with our group on the phone. Can you go ahead and give us some details on what you guys are doing for us?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Kathy, when you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, we discussed a lot of the topics of moving forward in the We Mean Business WebEx series. And I couldn't be more excited and I'm going to introduce you to my right-hand partner in crime up at home office, Gary Lanz. This is a topic that is very near and dear to me because I've been involved in wholesaling and coaching and life and annuity distribution for probably between 28 and 30 years, which kind of dates me a little bit, but that gives me a little bit of wisdom. And I've seen what works out there, and I've seen what doesn't work. And I think what we're about to share with you today is just an incredible learning and coaching proposition, because knowing your business means just that, knowing what you're doing, knowing your product, knowing your conversations, knowing your design, but really generally knowing your business. And where, in my 28 years, where I've seen most agents fall down, it's really the illustration that they take to the table. They usually take 2 or 3 or 4, which confuses the heck out of the clients, and they circle numbers and they show people, and that's all well and good. But here's the danger in it. The frustrated, I call it a sale killer, but where my frustration comes from is an agent comes back and says to me, boy, I really had an incredible opportunity to put a couple of my clients in a phenomenal program, but oh my gosh, they started going through the illustration page by page, and by the 3rd or 4th, gee, I don't know the answer to that, or boy, that's a good question. The agent lost tremendous credibility and lost a lot of wind in their sail, as Gary will tell you. And it's just something that you want to be prepared for. And our job is to really coach and prepare you as you move forward with your clients. So after the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, I don't know, or don't worry about it, that's just insurance home office speak, you're dead. You've lost a lot of credibility, and what we're going to share with you today is you've squandered a great opportunity to show off your professional skills and prowess. And you know, anytime you fall down with the illustration process of being able to explain what certain pieces of a 21-page illustration, doubt starts to creep into the mind of the buyer, and again, you're just squandering a tremendous opportunity. So, with all that said, I'd like to introduce Gary Lanz. Gary, thanks for joining us this morning. And Gary can maybe tell us a little bit about himself. He's not just a home office guy. He had a really stellar career as an agent with New York Life for a few years, Gary. And Gary's going to tell us how to really view an illustration now more as a powerful sales tool and aid. So, Gary, take it away, please.
All right, thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Kathy, for inviting me along with Mike.
Good morning.
As Mike said, my name is Gary Lenz, and I work here at the beautiful home office of National Life Group I work in Paradise up here in beautiful Montpelier, Vermont. And it's a beautiful day every day here as far as I'm concerned. I've been here, as Mike said, I was an agent before I came to National Life, and I was an agent for almost 7 years with New York Life right here in Vermont, selling products that we offer, but I didn't have the chance to sell some of the index products that I wish I had. Didn't know about them when I was at New York Life. They didn't offer them. They forbid us from even selling them. So you've got an opportunity. But some of the things I learned as an agent, I've walked to some extent in your shoes, maybe with similar cases, maybe not. But I learned a lot being an agent. I've always considered myself a professional life insurance agent, always. That is what I do. And when I came here to National Life, I saw it as an opportunity for me to really take myself to the next level, not necessarily my business, because I left all my clients behind, but I have learned so much in the 8+ years I've been here about the sale and the products and the way they're designed, that it's given me the opportunity to take that and help agents learn how to sell. Knowing the right amount of information, being able to answer the questions, but also keeping it as simple as possible to the clients. Because remember, the clients are not anywhere near as educated as you are. Remember when you spent the first 1 hour learning about life insurance, your first hour, because that's all your clients have really done in most cases. They'll sit with you for an hour, and they probably don't have any other life insurance education at all. So when Mike asked me to any ideas of doing a topic, I said, you know what, Mike? I said, it's very popular with a lot of our independent agents when they're new, is how to read the output. You know, Mike mentioned 20-odd pages, and it's up to 30-something now with the new regulations. They required more disclosure about indexing, but that's actually good, because I view an illustration not as a 30-plus page boat anchor. I look at that as, this tells you what your product is, it tells you what you're planning to do, it shows you the flexibility of life insurance, and it truly shows you why it shouldn't be called death insurance. Don't be those agents that shoot yourself in the foot and send, you know, let me show you this one, this one, this one, and this one, and all of a sudden you've piled 120 plus pages in front of the client, and their eyes glaze over, and they say, you know, let me think about it, and then you're never going to get in touch with them again. Know the illustration inside and out. In fact, if you read an illustration before you read about the product, you'd be surprised how much you'll learn about the product itself just by reading an illustration. It's one of our primary training tools we use here for new staff on the sales desk. So with all that said, thank you again for your time today. I know your time is valuable, but I think you'll find, if you find only one thing to take away from this, you'll have a time well spent. I'm going to ask you to, you're going to do some homework while you're at this. If you're not driving down the road, please grab a pad of paper and take notes and pay attention. You'll only hear what I'm saying, but you'll want to see what's on the screen. So if you can, take some notes on what we're talking about. The second piece of your homework is, while we are talking, if you find that a client comes to mind, a prospect comes to mind, an existing client comes to mind, write their name down. If you think you can take some of this away today and go either introduce or reintroduce them, or if you're in the midst of preparing for a closing meeting, then obviously this might be some good information here that you hadn't seen or thought about. So let's get started. For today's demonstration, I'm just going to do what I consider this a pretty basic illustration. I've run a couple of these in the past, so I'm just going to consider this a real basic illustration. We see an awful lot of designs where, hey, my client wants to maximize cash values. And this is not by the way, this is not a session to learn how to use their illustration software. It's really focusing on the output. But I want to see you to see what I built before we get to the output. My client wants to put $10,000 a year in for the next 20 years. He's a 45-year-old male. We'll just leave him standard. I click on minimum death benefit max cash value. You'd be surprised how often what I'm clicking on means exactly what it says. I want to create the minimum death benefit to build the maximum cash value for my $10,000 a year premium. I got a couple errors. I don't worry about the errors. You see a little red bubble popping up. I don't worry about it. I just work right through it because I know what it is and I need to specify my premium. We'll put $10,000 into this policy for this client. We'll pay all the way until he's age 65. You know, again, this is just a hypothetical design. You customize it however you want. None of what you illustrate ends up putting anything in concrete for the client. They can change their mind. They can put maybe put more premiums in, stop paying earlier, skip premiums. None of that matters. This is a flexible type of situation. Not going to worry about any 1035 money, although an IUL is a great way to take an old policy that has cash sitting there and doing a number of things with it. Either give it a boost as far as cash value accumulation, or maybe take away some risk if it happens to be in an old variable policy, and you can you're licensed to make that kind of recommendation. More importantly, though, we want to show income. This is where the sizzle in any life illustration is, according to most agents. But I'm going to show you there's more sizzle than just the income from the client's perspective. I'm going to use our proprietary lifetime income benefit rider. There's 900 carriers are out there, and if you're selling our products, you have found one of only 2 that has the ability to guarantee an income out of an index product. So I'm going to use that to my benefit. I'm going to use that my client can guarantee an income out of his policy. I don't need to change anything else. I'm not going to add any riders, although our industry-leading accelerated benefit riders are already going to illustrate. I'm not going to change the dates that they show, the ages that they show. We'll just leave those as it defaults, but they're already included. There's no other riders, cost riders that I want to add. Death benefit protection pops up because that's a no-cost rider. For today's demonstration, I don't want to show any of those. Interest rates, I'm just going to leave it at the maximum illustratable rate, which today for us is 7.01. We'll talk a little bit about that too once I illustrate the output, and you'll be able to see what I'm showing. I always take a look real quick first on my quick view. I want to see on screen, what did I create? I created a policy that's $545,000 plus. I'm putting in $10,000 a year of premium. Whoops. It created a policy that has $10,000 a year as my guideline level premium. Remember, I said to the computer, please give me the minimum death benefit that will fit the premium I'm trying to pay to build the most cash value, or min-max solve as a lot of people call it. When you scroll down on the quick view anyway, right on your screen, we're creating an income. We've got this income column that's showing, and eventually we stopped premiums and we showed income. That's all I wanted to see before I actually go to the output. To go to the output, I would just click on reports, and I'm going to show an optional report that many of you might not use because I want to discuss it a little bit. So the way our system displays the reports, we have some optional pages. Think of these as the sales pages. This is where all the sizzle resides, is in these intro pages. If you don't want them, you don't have to have them. But you might not even want to print them out. Frankly, when I was an agent, I bought a color laser jet printer to print and produce professional illustrations that I could present to my client in color with fine print that didn't smudge if the ink wasn't dry when you touched it because it was a laser. I'm going to add this optional report called Policy Charges and Expenses, and we'll end up talking about why I did that. Now from here, all I do is I click Run Reports. Normally I would save my inputs first before I created the PDF, but I'm not going to for today. I'm just going to run this sample without saving it. It's going to take a few seconds to generate the PDF. I've enlarged my screen so I hope everyone can see it on the other end. I always wonder with WebEx is just how much people can see on the other end. So I'm seeing a fairly large image on my side. Hopefully everybody can see. Right from the first page only, you can see why I made that recommendation of buying a color laserjet printer. You can write it off, by the way. It's a business expense. We have colorful presentation pages that look so much more professional. Right on the front, it's nice and basic. It has the client's name, your name and address. If you're running these yourselves, you'll have your name and address. If we're running them here at the home office, they're going to say trusted agent with our address. So you might want to work with Kathy to get illustrations run, or use the system to run your own, and that way you can customize it with your name and address. This logo that you see, the circle, the puzzle as we call it, it's prevalent throughout our marketing materials from beginning to end because our policies are not death insurance, they're life insurance. They cover you if you die too soon, but they also help you if you become seriously ill or if you live too long. And again, there's some sizzle for you. We're not selling death insurance. You're not selling death insurance. By selling the National Life products, you've aligned yourself with a leader and innovator for using your life insurance if you become seriously ill, and using your life insurance if you're worried about living too long and using the cash value. Not all policies will do that. Not all of them are just death benefit either, but we are the leader when it comes to accelerated benefit riders and also the lifetime income benefit rider. Let's keep scrolling down. I skip a lot of the verbiage, so just so you know, I'm not going to go through this page by page, line by line, but I just want you to get a sense for what does the second page show. Not a bunch of numbers. Yes, a lot of verbiage, But it really helps when you leave this illustration behind. It really helps the client if they read it, if they take the time to read it. What are they actually doing? Why are they buying this life insurance from National Life or LSW? What is it providing them? Talks right away about financial protection. It talks about flexibility. It talks about living benefits, which most clients don't even know about. And yes, footnotes. It gives a nice graphic depiction. Look, Mr. Client, pay your premium of $10,000 a year. By the time you reach, in this case, we use the age of 66, you've either got a death benefit of $397, or you've created an income of $23,000 a year that you can't outlive. Total benefit received, if they had lived all the way till age 120, $1.2 million for their $10,000 a year. Do the quick math for them. Of $10,000 a year, I had you pay for 20 years, that's $200,000. Not bad compared to those benefits received. In fact, oh, by the way, before I give you the in fact, there's also a quick summation of the accelerated benefit riders. All right, let's say you're not going to live long because you're terminally ill, chronically ill, critically ill, or you have a critical injury. There's money available and you haven't died. That is a very powerful concept. But rather than do the quick math I started to say a moment ago, why not just go to the next page? Graphically, it lines up, Mr. Client, the premiums you pay versus at the same age, by the time you're 66, what the guaranteed death benefits are, what the net death benefit was if you were starting to take cash out, what the terminal, chronic, and critical illness values are in a graphic format, or as you saw a moment ago in the prior page, a numerical format. People learn differently. People have different styles of learning. I don't know the technical words for them. There's actually some technical words. I just use the basics of people either learn well with numbers or they learn well visually with graphics, and there are many people that like both. So our illustration has, in its presentation pages, both numbers, where it summarizes what they're buying, and the graphics. So you get both. Remember I said these are optional pages. You don't have to use these, but I scratch my head and say, why would you not want to? Because they're telling the story for your client, especially if you're an agent that emails illustrations ahead of meeting with the client, which I don't think is a good thing. I know this day and age that's what clients want, but they don't understand what you're going to email them. So if you can in your practice, try to avoid that. That's my advice. That's one man's advice.
Hey, Gary.
Especially if you send more than one. Yes, Mike.
I'd just like to interject here because I was saving this for the end of your presentation, but I think it's worthwhile to insert right now. I have seen very little buyer's remorse with our programs in particular in the 9 years I've been with our company. I can't say that for other carriers I've represented. And one of the number one client concerns down the road, the second, the third, the fourth year, ultimately they come back and they say, you know what, I'd like to get my money back. I didn't know I was buying life insurance. I thought I was buying into an investment or something. And yeah, I want my money back. Or secondly, sometimes clients just, have to make a decision. And they stop making premium payments, and you get that lapse notice as an agent, and you call them, and what kind of a conversation are you going to have with this client to get to get them to get back into a paying mode? And what Gary is sharing with you right now answers all of these conversations, because if you go through this and understand the illustration and make sure the client to some degree, and Gary will get into how in-depth you should go with the client, probably not give them a WebEx like this, but certainly this will really aid in taking away buyer's remorse down the road when they start getting their annual statements and they're thinking about, oh, I got to make a decision now. Should I buy a vacation property, or should I keep putting that $10,000, $20,000 into that, quote, life insurance program? So I wanted to throw that out because this is very fruitful, and it all ties into the point we're trying to get across, Gary. So I thought I'd just give you a little break there, Gary. Great job. So please continue.
That's right, Mike, because that was a perfect point to me, kind of take a little side street here for a second. Because when those clients have that buyer's remorse, if it's not immediate, it's down the road, you can always focus back on, and Mike, I have to assume everyone can see our website on the screen right now, is that right?
Looks great. Yep.
So one of the things we have on our website is information about the living benefits. So if you're talking to your client 2 or 3 years down the road, remind them about this illustration. Heck, if you have to, send them a copy, because honestly, I'm afraid to say there's a lot of agents that don't keep copies of what they give their clients, but they should, because at 2 or 3 years now down the road, you want to get another sale. So it might mean saving this sale to get the next sale too from them. So sending them a copy of this, and you reiterate to them about our living benefits, and it's not just life insurance that you bought, it's life insurance that has benefits and features that you're not going to get from other carriers. No, it's not an investment, and the website's a little slow. What I want to point out on our website is there is information, there are videos, real live people, not actors, because in fact I've met some of these people, where we talk about, or the clients I should say, talk about what happened in their life and why National Life products became the hero in their life, came to save them, and they haven't died. Jessica's story is a good example. I went a little too fast. I'm sorry there. I'm not going to show the videos. I don't have time for that. But on the financial solutions for individuals and then living benefits, there are videos from real clients of ours where they didn't die and they used their benefits. Robert Curry was diagnosed with ALS. Jessica was diagnosed with cancer. Yovan and Benita, Yovan was diagnosed with a rare kidney cancer. Their life insurance, in some respects, saved their lives. If it didn't save their life, it saved their financial life before they died. So don't forget that that's a big part of our story, and that should be part of your story, especially if you're trying to salvage a sale either right away or a few years down the road. Let me move along in what the output looks like. Yes, there's more verbiage that talks about, in this case, an entire 2 pages is dedicated to the lifetime income benefit rider. Why? Because it's important. Not because compliance said we had to, but because it's important for the client to understand how it works. They're going to take a lot of faith in what you tell them if they have a good relationship with you. But by us telling them the same thing, you're reiterating what's in a piece of paper that you're going to leave behind, so that you're telling exactly what the story is, just like we're telling it. We get into this other format, this layout, where we take and break the puzzle apart, and we start lining up the components of your policy to the different puzzle pieces, whether it be protecting in the event of death, protecting in the event of serious illness, or protecting in the event of you live too long and cash value accumulation. Very simple layout, so your client doesn't have to read the entire thing if they don't want to, but it helps you to focus on what's the parts you want the client to focus on. We have, I think there are 2 big schools of teaching out there in the agent world with respect to clients. I think a lot of our agents focus on cash values, but I think equally a lot of them focus on the accelerated benefit riders. So when I go to the next page, there's an entire page dedicated to putting a puzzle piece into a numeric a representation that your clients can understand. If you become terminally ill, if you become chronically ill, if you become critically ill or have a critical injury, this is real money in your pocket, Mr. Client. You have not died. Now, I'm pretty blunt with the way I talk. I don't want you to be that way with your clients, but I wanted to use it to stress my points so that you can then build it into your language every day that you use with your clients. One whole page detailing the values. Then we get into, yes, there is some verbiage in here that the compliance and the NAIC require, all the various definitions, which we can really fast forward through a lot of those. Rider definitions, if they want to have, you want to know what events trigger critical illness? Don't call us. Don't waste time on hold. You can call us if you want, but I mean, you might sit on hold. Read the illustration right here. It tells you what is included in critical illness, for example. What diseases are covered? Right in the illustration. So when your client asks, well, look right here, Mr. Client, on this page right here, and you have this turned around so that they're looking at it and you're pointing at it with your pen, direct their attention with your pen. If anyone has ever had a training on the psychology of the client, You always want to have the document facing them if they're not sitting next to you, and use your pen, not writing on it, but you just use your pen as a pointer to direct their attention to what you want them to see. Little psychology of the client for you. What classifies as a critical injury? Spelled out right here, right in the illustration. So use the illustration to your advantage rather than to the detriment of, I don't know, let me call the home office and find out. Because you know what, if you're calling me and you're sitting with a client, I'm going to be real worried that you might have given the wrong answer and I'm changing the answer and I don't want the client to know that. So I'm worried anytime I hear an agent, I'm sitting with a client, I immediately worry that they might lose that sale, especially if the client's hearing me what I have to say and the agent was wrong.
Gary, that's a tremendous point, and that's where I think the credibility falls down. If I'm a consumer as well as a sales guy, and I'm brutal on pool repair people, air conditioning people, I mean, they probably hate me by the time I leave because I know my business, and I challenge them to know their business. And when they don't have an answer for me, I challenge them and ask them why. And that they get really frustrated and start sweating, and I get very, very frustrated and show them the door because, you know, educated consumers today, they want to get the answer from you because you're the messenger. And when you have to call home office, that's a sign to me of weakness. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't lie to them or make something up and manufacture something if you need, you know, if you need one key element clarified, that's great to call home office and speak to Gary or someone at the sales desk. But when you have to rely on them to kind of hold your hand to go through the illustration, that's why this is so important, being prepared. And one other footnote, I think being prepared as Gary is walking through this with you, it's just going to create tremendous confidence and swagger in the closing process for you because you're almost sitting back challenging them to poke a hole in the plan because you're really prepared. So Gary, I thought I'd throw that in as well.
No, that's a good point because Mike, I do the same thing. I challenge other salespeople because I'm a salesperson. I don't write and sell, but I'm still a salesperson. So I challenge them, and my wife hates it when I do it because she thinks I embarrass myself. But anyway, moving along, definitions of the different riders. You want to know how the riders work? Why do you want a specimen policy that's 18 pages written by a lawyer? Read the illustrations. It talks in general, makes it language that's understandable. That's one of the benefits of our business. And one of the guys, the senior guys I work with, joked, and he said this to me when I told him what I was doing today right now. He said, you know, oh, good, that's an illustration. That's a good one for a WebEx because it's not written by attorneys. And he's right. Our policies, all the time we get questions from clients and agents wanting to see a specimen policy. And guess what? It's written in legalese, and you're not going to understand it. But a life insurance illustration is not. Yes, it has influence by legal, and it has influence by compliance and the regulators, but it's written in such a way that generally educated people can understand it if they take the time to read it. Yeah, you've got to explain a lot of things, but read it. My challenge for new folks that I train on the desk, and I didn't mention this before, but because I'm the senior, I'm the most senior on the desk, one of my roles is to train new staff. So one of my exercises I go through with them is, here you go, run illustrations on yourself, family members, run different products, print them, read them, and tell me why you chose what you chose. And we're going to go through it, and you're going to explain it to me as if I'd never seen this before. That can be daunting for a brand new person in this business that hasn't been in the business, but that's a great exercise for you to take the time to do that. If you're not familiar with our software, if you're not familiar with our output, run an illustration on yourself and read it. And that can be very helpful for your sales going forward. Let's move along to, we got lots more definitions. We're going to skip right through them. More pages of definitions, because to me that's not really salesy. None of those definitions are that salesy. The lifetime income benefit rider is, I happen to use it on this, so there's a lot of explanation about it. If I didn't illustrate lifetime income, these pages get suppressed, just the fact that it has it, but not all this explanation shows. And then we get to indexing, and I'm going to speak to a minute about indexing and the changes in regulation. Let me start off with the easy comment. For anybody who you've not prospected, the regulations don't matter because they never saw it before they changed. Remember that. If you're thinking it's difficult now because of the change of regulation, if your clients or prospects have never seen an illustration from you, they don't know the difference. They don't know that the regulations changed. They don't know that you used to be able to illustrate higher numbers. Only you do. So don't let that be a stumbling block going forward. Now, with that said, for those that aren't that familiar with the changes made us, meaning all insurance companies that sell index UL, have standardized methods of coming up with our maximum illustratable rate. The fancy term is called back testing or back casting. Standard methodology where we determine a maximum rate. That came into play last September. And then this year in March, the second piece was added where it said if you're illustrating a variable loan, the maximum difference between the loan rate and the illustrated rate can only be 1%. So that compressed the numbers, the values, the incomes. And everybody was getting into a fray about that. And I realized when I was talking with an agent, look, if the client's never seen it, they don't know the difference. So if it's still saleable, it doesn't matter. Sell it. Remember, it's a hypothetical only. An illustration is not carved in stone. It's a hypothetical example of one of an infinite number of possibilities. So remember that. Indexing is fully explained in, I think it's about 3 or 4 pages of an illustration. It's almost too much information, but the regulator said we need to disclose it. So we disclose how it works. We disclose the methodology of looking at all 25-year periods in the last 65 years. Talk about a conservative back testing, 65 years of the S&P. And then it goes on to talk about, well, which ones are we allowed to use? In this case, if we went back all periods, we found that the minimum was at 5.8, the maximum was at 8.14, but the regulation goes on to say, well, you got to use the average of 701. That's where we come up with that. More importantly, clients aren't necessarily going to look at that detail. They're going to look at this chart here, which I actually am very happy that the regulation required us to add this back in September. Because what this says is if your policy had existed in its current form for the last 20 years, how much interest credit would your policy have earned each year for those 20 years? And this starts in 1996, and it's very simple. And it says in 96, the S&P year over year grew 20%. And I can't get that to highlight for some reason. 20% year over year in 96. Well, what did we credit in strategy 1? We credited 12.25 because that's the cap today. So we have to assume the cap existed back then. And then what did we credit the next year? And the next year, and the next year. So for all those naysayers, the non-IUL companies, by the way, who are saying, no, your illustratable rates are too out of the whack. They're pie in the sky. Are they? Because take a look what happens when your variable product, Mr. Competitor, went down 10%. What did the S&P do? What did our products do? 0. This is very powerful when you get that skeptical client that says, yeah, but, when you bring up the conversation of the S&P. Because the yeah, but is reinforced by these numbers. No, the policy didn't exist. But if it had, here's what would have happened. Flex Life came out in 2011, by the way, for those new to us. Came out in 2011. Look at that, right at the time markets were turning down again. But that's okay, because look what happened in the next couple of years. In fact, 2014 I thought was a little bit higher than that, but it must be there was probably near the end of the year we saw a little bit of tailing off of the S&P. But that's pretty good considering right now what can you illustrate? 701.
Gary, Gary, just to take a breath here, great job. I love this conversation because sometimes, and there's 2 ways to look at this. Sometimes people get a little hinky and they get a little market crazy and they think they're in the market and they get a little, they get a little wiggy. And I always say, hey, don't forget, Mr. Agent, if you start feeling you have to know your clients and know their risk tolerance level, and there is the ability to allocate into the fixed bucket. So when you see those zeros there and you get a little bit of a frown and say, oh my, I might have to explain that a couple of times. Well, that's just the way, the market's trend. And if you want to insulate against that, I mean, back when you saw those zeros, the fixed bucket was paying 5 1/4, 5 1/2. So if you put half of the money into the fixed bucket, you were still having some earnings. It's not like it's a doom and gloom scenario. The second issue is sometimes people will listen to what I just said and say, you know what, Mike, I get it, but if I'm going to go into an index product, I want the gusto of the upside, and I'm good with the downside being zero. You know, as long as I don't get hurt, as Gary said, and I don't have to recover a 10, 15, 20-point loss, I'm good. So I think always remember that in the back of your mind, that it's not always about the indexing. The indexing is very powerful and sexy, but there's also that safety floor of the fixed bucket, which currently right now, Gary, is at 4.5%, correct?
I think so, yes. But Mike, you know, Mike takes an approach of how to, you know, kind of calm the client down, which is fine. But let me explain something here for you. And that this is, you've got to also judge the detailed nature of the client to see how deep you go in the explanation. But let's use the example of what I highlighted. 2008, the S&P went down 38%. So we credited zero, big deal. If you're in the fixed account, okay, back then you probably would have earned about 5.5, but big deal. Because look at the next year, 2009. Did it come back up 38%? Did it recover its loss? No. In fact, it only came up 23%, which is nowhere near recovering the loss from 2008. And what did we credit? We credited 12% when it hadn't even recovered from the year before. Because you've got to understand the mechanism and the ratcheting of an index product. When the S&P went down, we set a new starting point for the next year, which was 38% lower than the year before. So we can recoup, we don't have to recoup what we lost to get positive, strong positive interest credits. That's phenomenal with an index product. And that's coming from a guy who, I have a securities license, and I used to play in the market a lot more than I do today. Indexing can be phenomenal, and it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect on the downside and give positive results on the upside. So this chart, if you can't use this chart to your advantage, then give me a call, because you should be able to. Let's move along. There's some more information about indexing, things like our current caps, guaranteed caps, participation rates, etc. There's explanation of what they all are. There's plenty of explanations in here. Even more disclosures as to what strategies you decided to use and in what allocation. An awful lot of agents just leave it as strategy 1 because that's the way the system defaults. But I often find that clients are spreading it out amongst these different strategies because nobody knows what the S&P is going to do and when it will do it. So they're using a multitude of the different indexing strategies available. And by the way, we've kept our strategies nice and simple. Standard & Poor's 500, and we have this other one that's called the MSCI Emerging Markets. No fancy names, no rainbow type disclosures. We don't have 14 different strategies. We have 5. Nice and simple and basic, because it doesn't matter what index you use. You're just measuring change. So you could be using, I have an old classic car, and I told Mike one day, there's actually an index of values of classic cars. I could use that index for an index product. You're just measuring change. We move down to, now we come to the numbers, the pages everybody thinks is the sizzle. They go to the numbers pages, and when you emailed your client this illustration, look what ledger he saw first. He saw the guaranteed ledger, which is not exactly the sexiest of the 3 ledgers. In fact, it shows the worst values. There's one of the reasons I say don't email it to a client. It shows the lowest income numbers. In this case, though, in a worst case guaranteed basis, the client still developed an income using our lifetime income benefit rider. The design of it was such that even in a worst case, this client still got an income. And this is illustrating worst case of 2.5% illustrated values of S&P change, along with our maximum expenses and a loan rate of 4.5% because I'm using the lifetime income benefit rider. Let's fast forward to the next set of ledgers after the guaranteed, because I don't like the guaranteed and I wouldn't be selling based on them. We get to the next ledgers where we had to change our format. The regulation required us to start showing again our current, which is on the right-hand side, the 7.01% versus an alternative, which is 4%. So we had to lay them out this way, unfortunately, because the change in the regulation. It made the pages a lot busier and it added pages. But when you get to where the income starts, You see, well, Mr. Client, the guarantee, that was the worst case if it happened. If this 4% a year happens, it shows an income of 15. If the 7% a year happens, it shows an income of 23,000. Remember, this is a hypothetical. So we're showing different alternatives of what might happen because we don't know what's going to happen. In fact, I chose to start this rider at age 66. I could wait if I wanted to. Actually, I could have done it as early as 60 if I wanted to, but I just chose paying to 65 in my example. Work with what your client wants to see, or work with what's realistic, because sometimes what they want to see is not realistic. And we go down through page after page of numbers, and I actually would direct my attention to the first ledger set I would direct my client's attention to is actually starts right here. And this is why I say when you email this to a client, they're going to start looking at the guarantees, and they're not going to be that excited about what you're showing them. So if I'm sitting with the client, I'm going to go through some of the front pages on the beginning, start showing them about how this isn't just life insurance, how there's other benefits, and then I'm going to flip to this page. The other pages are for them to read at their leisure. I would never go through all 41 pages of an illustration, but I would flip to this page and say, look, so here's your paying in your $10,000 a year. Here we're assuming you're going to earn 7%. Don't get dissuaded by this weighted average starting lower. There is a reason. We are crediting 7%, showing it this policy every year. Because of the mechanics of the policy, it will start out a little bit lower. And here, Mr. Client, if all goes well and you earn 7% a year, we're guaranteeing you an income of $23,000 plus a year. That's where I skip to. That's the sizzle page from the numbers perspective. That's the number that was showing on our page 2 way back in the beginning, where it showed an income of $23,000 a year, which equated to a $1.2 million benefit if they lived a very long time. That's why I would go to this page. Now this is 3 pages long, sometimes 4. A lot depends upon the age of the client, how many years we have to illustrate. But I added a second ledger that I wanted to discuss briefly. I mean, not a second ledger, but an optional report on the end. Once we get past the signature page, I added this policy expenses and other charges, you know, because this is a way that I was taught that I'm not sure if agents are being taught this or not. So I always throw it out there that maybe you want to show this. Because what's going to happen, this is to help, I call it bulletproofing your sale. This is to help that post-purchase dissatisfaction at the end of the first policy year. Because your client gets a statement that says right on the first page, you paid in $10,000 of premium and we took out $3,400. What? They think, wait a minute, you took out 34% of my premium in expenses? Yep, we did. And if you haven't prepped the client for that, if you haven't primed them, you may get a call from them, you may not. We might just get the call and they're going to cancel their policy. They're going to call our people who are not salespeople, because I don't deal with those clients. They're going to call our customer relations people and they're going to give them facts. Yes, we took that money out. Those are the expenses of the policies. They're not going to reiterate the sale because they're not going to know the sale. They're not going to know about the income benefits. They're not going to know how you sold it to the client. So I was trained when I was an agent. I sold variable life, which is full of expenses. I was trained to talk about expenses at the point of sale. And then you've brought it up. And when the client is dissatisfied and brings it up 6 months later, a year later, in our case it would be a year, with variable life where I was selling, it was 90 days later, they got a statement. But they'll bring it up. You could say, well, remember, go grab that illustration. If you don't have it, I can send it to you. We talked about these expenses. This is the cost of getting all these benefits put in place right up front. Have that conversation because the expenses exist.
Gary, again, I think that's an incredible conversation. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you know, this is really huge because a lot of people don't do this. They're fearful of this because they just want to get the sale. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. When they see that, and it's going to occur with any company, they all have policy fees, charges, expenses. And to reiterate, look, Mr. Client, all of these benefits you're getting, by the way, the living benefits, the chronic, critical, terminal, critical illness, critical accident, that's all tax-free money. And the lifetime income benefit rider that you illustrated, Gary, is tax-free money guaranteed for life. So sometimes people scratch their head, and unbeknownst to you, they say, you know what, this just sounds too good to be true. How can it be free and no charge? There's something wrong here. So this completes the psychological circle, if you will, and they say, oh, okay, well, there's the going freight there. There's fees and policies and the upside with the downside protection. Okay, there's a cost to everything, so I get it. So go ahead, Gary, this is great.
Yeah, Mike, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to throw out that simple example I always use. You've heard me use it many times. When your clients are balking about expenses and balking about, well, I don't need life insurance, you know what? I'm not selling this to you just because it's life insurance. I'm selling it because of all these other benefits. The accelerated benefit riders, the immediate death benefit in case your family needs it, but I'm hoping you, Mr. Client, are going to live a long time. The ability to pull tax-free loans out of this policy, and in what I'm showing you, the ability to guarantee that income, there's costs for that. You've got to pay, there's costs that you've got to pay, but the benefits certainly outweigh that. If you live a very long time, it very much outweighs it. Let me give you an example. If you, on your way home from work tonight, stop at a convenience store to buy a candy bar, a big gulp at 7-Eleven, whatever, something quick that you grab at a convenience store. Do you ever think about the parts of what you're buying that you're paying for but don't want? And of course, the client's not going to understand what you mean. So then take it a little further. Look, you're buying a Snickers bar. You grab it off the shelf, you go to the counter, you pay for a Snickers bar, and you walk out. Did you want to pay for the wrapper? Of course, the answer is no. Did you want to pay for the distribution costs, the advertising costs? Did you want to pay for that to get to the store? Would you have bought it without the wrapper? Of course not. But they paid for all those other things to get the benefit of what's inside that wrapper. So there's costs associated with the wrapper. The wrapper is the life insurance policy. Would your family complain if you died after 1 year? Of course not. Heck, they wouldn't even complain if you died after 10 years. You pay 100 grand in, your death benefit's still 500,000. I don't think they'll complain. I don't think they're going to come to us and say, well, what were those expenses in the policy he bought anyway? So you've got to have that conversation. Whether you choose to have it up front or not, that's up to you. But I think it's a good conversation to have so you can explain, why you're recommending what you're recommending. So, Mike, that's what I wanted to cover today. I don't know if Kathy has an intention of opening it up to questions or not, how she's doing that.
Kathy, we'll throw it back to you. Great job, Gary. Kathy, any questions out there?
No, but this helps a lot of explanations. A lot of agents call us all the time. Yes, this is perfect. A lot of agents call us all the time. They get the illustration, and they'll call while they're with the client, and I don't understand. What's all this? Yep. And this is perfect, perfect, perfect. You can show them, explain it to them, and I think anytime someone calls me now about an illustration that we send out to them, I'm going to send them this webinar because this is perfect opportunity for them to view.
You know, Kathy, I have a background as a professional athlete. I played professional football, and anytime I was a failure in a tryout scenario, it's because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in top shape. I elected to work more than go to the gym and lift weights, and then when training camp arrived, I was in somewhat shape, and I said, oh, well, I'm a great athlete. I'll just get into shape while I'm there. Wrong. I got blown away because everybody was 2-3 steps faster than me, better shape, because they were very professional. They put professional football at the forefront. They didn't work. They didn't do anything but prepare for that training camp and that season. And this is what this is all about. To develop the swagger and the confidence to go out there and double, triple, and quadruple your sales. The people that are making a ton of money are the people that have that swagger, and you don't get that swagger by just waking up one day and having an incredible personality. It's knowing your business, and this is, Gary said this to me. When I transitioned years ago from annuity to life insurance, Gary talked to me the same way he's talking to you today and said, Mike, the best way I can train you is let's do an illustration on yourself, print it, and read it 10 times. Circle everything you don't understand. Call me back. I'll explain it. And I got to tell you, the confidence that I got from that exercise put me over the top in training agents and financial advisors because I knew in my heart and soul that nobody could point to anything in that illustration and embarrass me, or I wouldn't have an answer. And me, I'm just, I know about credibility and being prepared. So that's just me. But Kathy, back to you again.
Okay.
Any questions?
I actually didn't have anybody asking any questions, which is a good thing. So I think this is very, very thoughtfully spelled out. Gary did a really great job. I will, if anyone has any additional questions, they can always reach us at Premier at 1-800-365-8208. Just ask for a life marketer. We're here to help you in that direction. Or I know if anyone's been working with Gary, they can call Gary too and get some information from him. But I think this is a really good webinar that we just did today. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for everybody's time. Thank you, Gary. Marvelous job as ever. So everyone, have a great week, and thanks for joining us today.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye now.
Have a good one.